It pains my soul to think of the countless babies killed since abortion on demand became commonplace in the unconstitutional decision of Roe v. Wade. While individuals across our nation have elected multiple pro-life majorities and presidents, we've had minimal success in protecting the unborn. We are decades past the time to defend the sanctity of human life. It is important that Congress passes such a strong pro-life bill now, because President Trump will hopefully appoint one or two more justices to the Supreme Court, making this a profound moment in the pro-life movement. President Trump is actively changing the makeup of our judicial system with strong conservative nominees who would hear arguments about this bill while it is being challenged on the way to the Supreme Court. Even Democratic presidents from a party that supports abortion on demand have made clear that unborn children are human beings. Under the Carter administration, the publication from the Department of Health and Human Services contained the following language, and I quote, "With the passage of time, the human organism grows from a single cell to a fully developed adult. Life begins when a male sperm unites with a female egg. The new life created by this union starts as a single cell. In relation to the total lifespan of the individual, the early developmental years are short and serve as the foundation for the remainder of one's lifespan. The needs of a child in the support of this growth and development begin before birth and continue throughout the growth years until maturity is reached." Close quote. The Obama administration included unborn children in its analysis of the maltreatment of children. In its 2012 annual report, the Department of Health and Human Services includes figures for abuse against unborn children, which is, of course, entirely appropriate given their uniquely vulnerable nature. It's time for the law to codify what we know to be true. Earlier this year, I introduced H.R. 490, the Heartbeat Protection Act, which would require would-be abortionists to determine whether an unborn child had a detectable heartbeat, to inform the mother of such heartbeat, and to refrain from aborting an unborn child whose heartbeat was detected. To put it simply, if the heartbeat is detected, the baby is protected. The bill includes an exception for instances in which an abortion is required to save the life of the mother. Some will argue that federal legislation that recognizes the fact that an unborn child is a human being, at least as soon as a heartbeat is detected, violates the Supreme Court's 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade. But few support the analysis the bare majority of the Supreme Court uses to justify its decision. Liberal professor Lawrence Tribe of Harvard Law School wrote, and I quote, "One of the most curious things about Roe is that behind its own verbal smokescreen, the substantive judgment on which it rests is nowhere to be found." Close quote. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, now a justice on the Supreme Court, wrote in a Law Review article in 1985, quote, "Roe, I believe, would have been more acceptable as a judicial decision if it had not gone beyond a ruling on the extreme statute before the court. Heavy-handed judicial intervention was difficult to justify and appears to have provoked, not resolved, the conflict." Close quote. Boy, was she right. The constitutionality of this bill is evident because Congress clearly has authority and an obligation under its Article I powers to pass laws that uphold the 14th Amendment, under which Section 1 mandates, quote, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." Close quote. This equal protection clause demands that the government provide equal protection to all Americans' lives, liberty, and property, including the life and liberty of Americans living in their mother's wombs. The 14th Amendment codifies the language of our Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson set up prioritized rights in our Declaration with this more familiar language. Quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Close quote. In both cases, life is the paramount right and cannot be taken without due process. Liberty is a right secondary to life. No one in exercising their right to liberty has a legitimate constitutional or moral claim to take the life of another. The question before us Since America has held the right to life as a sacred right from God, endowed by our Creator, the question before us is not, can the lives of innocent babies be taken in exercising the right to the liberty of the mother? But rather, at what instant does life begin? Science cannot precisely pinpoint the instant of conception, but the ultrasound proves beyond any doubt that life is present every time there is a heartbeat. The promises of our founding fathers must be restored to the voiceless and most vulnerable. Liberty can never again become the excuse to take the life of another.